Hi, third grade students. This is Ms. Higdon. You are watching our week 3 video for e-learning in our reading and writing class. Let's get started. This week we will be staying with that standard RL 1.3 to describe characters in a story, such as their traits, their motivations, or their feelings, and we will explain how their actions contribute to the sequence of events or how the story moves along in order. You can find all of our texts this week. We'll be reading 2 different texts, and you can find them on Myon. Make sure that the school name says Folsom Elementary, and then you will log in using your usual username, your lunch number, and your password that you use to log into Clever in order to get to Myon. After logging into Myon, find the Projects tab at the top of the screen that is next to your name and click on Projects. Then enter the eLearning Grade 3 Week 3 project. You will find that the purpose and the standard is listed in the icon for the Week 3 project, where we will describe characters throughout the story by paying attention to the pattern of events and when the character realizes something. When you click on the project, you will first open the book Moose and Magpie for the first 3 days this week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And before starting the book, make sure you click on the pager icon down at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen on Myon to display the page numbers. These are the page numbers that the directions will refer to when you are answering the questions on Myon and following the directions on Edsby and answering those questions on Edsby, excuse me. So these are our page numbers. Page 1 is the title page, and then we have the story continuing on page 2 all the way to 14. For day 1, we will be reading pages 1 through 5 of this text, Moose and Magpie. On day 2, Tuesday, we will read pages 6, 7, and 8. And on day 3, we will read pages 9 through 14 and finish off this story, Moose and Magpie. As we read our text this week, our first text is Moose and Magpie, and we will be paying attention to the characters in this story. And readers pay attention to the characters in their stories to better understand the characters. Readers notice how the characters act, how the characters speak, what the characters say, and what the characters think. After noticing these key details, then readers ask themselves, what does this tell me about the character? And that is how we will describe characters in our story. Remember, when you are describing what a character is like on the inside, we call that a character trait. It's usually one word to describe what the character is like on the inside. Some character traits that you might be familiar with are adventurous, curious, sneaky, proud. So we will be paying attention to how our characters act, how they speak, what they say, and what they think, so that we can figure out what this tells us about the character, including their character trait, what the character is like on the inside. So day 1 of week 3 e-learning. Today you will be reading Moose and Magpie. It isn't always easy being a moose, but this young moose has a special joke-telling friend to keep him company and to help him find his way. Join Moose, Magpie, and some of their other animal friends as they frolic through a year of changes. Today, we will be reading pages 1 through 5 on Myon. As we are reading, we will describe the characters at the beginning of the story by paying attention to the pattern of events and when the character realizes something. So let's get started. Before we move into Myon to read our text, good readers keep track of their thinking as they're reading by keeping a graphic organizer nearby. You may choose to copy this graphic organizer in your notebook at home. As we read Moose and Magpie, we will be writing down words and phrases that help us understand Moose's character. We will do the same for the other character, Magpie, as well. If you choose not to use this graphic organizer at home, that's okay. I will be showing you how to use the annotation tools on Mayan to keep track of the words and phrases that help us understand the characters as well. If you do decide to use this graphic organizer at home in your notebook, feel free to take a picture when you're all done with the graphic organizer and send it to me by texting it to my Google Voice number or sending it on Edsby so I can see your thinking. Before we open the book, I want to show you one vocabulary word that's critical to understanding the story. One of our characters is a moose, and this is what a moose looks like in real life. Moose have antlers. Antlers are the branched horns on the head of an adult moose or a deer. So now we are ready to read Moose and Magpie, pages 1 through 5 on Mayan. Remember to log into Mayan using the same username and password that you use for Clever. Once you log into Mayan and click on Projects, this is what you will see. Make sure you are in the Week 3 Projects tab. Then we have our 2 texts for this week. Today we are reading Moose and Magpie. Click on the green button to open the book. I'm going to start my book over from the beginning. Remember, before you start reading, to come down to the lower right-hand corner and click the pager icon to display the page numbers. Remember, we are reading pages 1 through 5, so we will stop here. Here is our title, or our cover, Moose and Magpie. On the cover, I noticed 2 characters. I see a moose with those antlers, and I see a bird. I'm wondering, based on my words, Moose and Magpie, what a magpie is. I can use the illustrations to help me out. I see a moose, and I see a bird. So I'm starting to figure out that a magpie might be a type of bird. I'm looking at the setting as well. It looks like the moose and the magpie are outdoors in a place that has mountains and lots of trees. I'm wondering and predicting if this story will be a fiction story or a nonfiction story where I receive true information. I'm thinking because the illustrations are drawn that it might be fiction, a story that is giving me details about characters, settings, and problems and solutions, a story that is not true. But it looks like these characters really could live in a place that has trees and mountains. So I may also receive some information about these types of animals. Let's get started reading so we can find out what these characters are like and see if our predictions are correct. This is page 2. Moose lived where the willow trees touched the ground and the lily pads floated on the water. Oh, Moose is a character. And I know this is the beginning of my story because the author also introduced the setting. He lived where the willow trees touched the ground and the lily pads floated on the water. I can also see his friends in the illustration, a beaver, a raccoon, a skunk. I also noticed beside this skunk, I'm going to put the page numbers down, a small box that says, with the exception of cows and calves, moose live alone. This box is considered a sidebar. It's giving me extra information along with the text. This information is true information, nonfiction information about moose. So in this sidebar, I just learned that moose live alone. Page 3. His head prickled. He found a tree and rubbed his head against it with all of his might. Hey, Moose, quit shaking the tree. I'm trying to eat some bugs up here, said Magpie. But my head itches. Why don't you come down and eat the bugs that are biting me? Begged Moose. Magpie laughed so hard she almost fell off the branch. Your antlers are coming in. Moose's itchy head drove him crazy, and he swam to forget about it. But no matter what, it only felt better when he rubbed his head up against the trunk of the oak tree and chewed his cud. The sidebar says, cows are females, bulls are males and grow antlers, an itchy process. This sidebar lets me know that Moose in my story is a bull or a male, a boy moose, and they grow antlers, those branches that come out of their heads, and it's an itchy process. Remember, we're reading to describe our characters and get a better understanding of them. As I pay attention to the details about what the character says, how they say it, what the character does, and how they act and think, I will be using the annotation tools here in Mayan. So I'm going to click the Tools button. I'm going to grab my highlighter, and I'm going to focus in on Moose and what Moose is like. I'm going to choose red as to highlight details about Moose's character. Let's look for some words and phrases to describe Moose. In the first paragraph, it says his head prickled. He found a tree and rubbed his head against it with all of his might. Moose is rubbing his head against the tree with all of his might. This phrase shows me that prickled probably means itches because the first sentence says his head prickled. Then he found the tree and rubbed his head against it with all of his might. What other words and phrases show us how Moose or what Moose is like based on how he acts and what he says? In the last paragraph, we see another action for Moose. Moose's itchy head drove him crazy, and he swam to forget about it. This action tells me that Moose is feeling very uncomfortable. I'm going to use my sticky note tool now and leave a sticky note near this sentence. I'm going to keep the sticky note red to remind me that this note is about Moose. When Moose's head was driving him crazy and he had to swim to forget about it, this tells me that Moose is feeling uncomfortable. I'm going to change this pin by clicking on the 3 lines and choosing the face to remind me that this is how a character feels. Let me move the sticky note out of the way. Now, I could also focus on my character Magpie by finding words and actions that Magpie is showing in this text and using the blue color to highlight details. When you read the Mayan text, you try to find some words and actions about Magpie and use the blue highlighter. Let's keep reading to learn more about these characters. Magpie told him jokes to ease his mind. What do the Liberty Bell and Moose have in common? Moose didn't know much about history. I don't know. Tell me. They both have bells that don't work, cackled Magpie. So you try. What are some words or phrases on this page that can tell us about Magpie? What did Magpie do? Right. I'm going to get my highlighter and I'm going to change the color to blue so we can focus in on Magpie. The first sentence tells us that Magpie is telling Moose jokes to ease his mind. I'm not sure what the word ease means, so I'm going to go to my dictionary and click, I'm going to go back to tools and click the highlighter so I'm not clicking anymore. I'm going to click on the word ease and then view in dictionary. So ease is a noun, freedom from pain. But in this sentence, Magpie is telling Moose jokes to ease his mind. That's a doing word, a verb. So I'm going to come down to this definition. Ease, a verb. To free from discomfort or worry. To make less tight. To move very carefully. He eased himself into the driver's seat. I think the best definition is the first one. Magpie is telling jokes to Moose to free him from discomfort or worry. Remember on the first page when we figured out that Moose was uncomfortable? That means he has discomfort. He was concerned about his head. Ooh, I did not mean to go to the next page. Let's go back. I'm going to click on the dictionary to put it away. There we go. So what does this action from Magpie telling jokes to his friend Moose tell us about Magpie, the bird? That's right. Magpie is being very helpful. He's being a friend by telling jokes to Moose to make him not be so focused on his itchy head. To take a note, remember you can click on Tools, click the sticky note, and stick it on the page. Then click inside the sticky note and feel free to type. Magpie is helpful. He is a good friend to Moose. Again, I'm going to change it so it can have a face and click off. There we go. You will finish reading pages 1 through 5 and using these annotation tools to figure out and determine what the characters are like. Describe what they're like on the inside, their character trait, and describe what they're feeling based on what they say and what they do that's significant in the story. Remember, we're only going to page 5, so you will read the next page all by yourself. So once you're done reading pages 1 through 5 on Mayan, you will go back into Edsby or take notes in your notebook about those character traits. Remember, you can draw this graphic organizer in your notebook to keep track of the character's actions, what they say and what they do, and what it tells you about that character in order to describe them and understand them better. So far today, we read about Moose. On the first page, the text said that his head was itching and he begged his friend to come down and eat the bugs that were biting him. What did this tell us about Moose? This tells us that Moose needed help from his friend. We can describe Moose as dependent or needing another person. Another action that we read about in our pages today was about Moose's head itching his itchy head driving him crazy, so much that he had to swim to forget about it, and it only felt better when he rubbed his head against that tree or chewed his cud. These actions tell us that Moose is feeling very uncomfortable. You can keep track using this graphic organizer of the character of Magpie. Make sure that you're writing down words and phrases that help you understand the character Magpie in your notebook at home. Some other questions that you can respond to in your notebook at home include, why did Moose have an itchy head? Remember to get your evidence from the text. What did Moose do to try to forget the itchiness? And how do we know that the pages we just read were the beginning of the story? Remember what authors do at the beginning of fictional stories? That's right, they introduce the character, the setting, and the problem. Don't forget, you are going to log into Edsby and take the reading comprehension questions test for today when you are done reading pages 1 through 5 and you have kept track of the words and phrases to describe each character. Then you will complete your daily 30 minutes of independent reading of book of your choice. You may go on to Myon and choose another book. You may read a book that you have at home, or even visit News, ELA, or Common Lit. After completing your independent reading, please log into Edsby and complete the writing test. And by the end of the week, you will need 45 minutes of iReady reading lessons. This does not all have to get done in one day. You can get on iReady for about 10 minutes each day and be able to complete your 45 minutes by the end of the week. Bye for now, guys.